Hey, it's Alex Evan from linemark.com. Today we are reviewing the brand new Titan 4500 line marking machine. This has just been delivered to us by Spray Direct, and we're going to be running through some of the features that we love about the machine and some of the things that we think could be improved. So to start us off, one of the things that you may notice straight away is this gun position on the top. What I love about this is a movable gun position, something that you don't see on any of the Graco machines currently on the market. What's great is that you can simply lift this up and drop your gun down onto the ground, slide it to the right position for your needs, and then just fold it up out the way once you're finished. This is really useful when you're loading the machine back into the van. One of the things I find with our Graco machines is when we're putting them back in the vans or trailers at the end of the day, there is a tendency to knock the guns or the arms, and it just moves everything out of sync. With this handy arm feature, all we do is loosen it off, lift it up, and just tuck it into the sort of stowing position that we have here. So really great feature that Titan have come up with, and one that I would love to see on a lot more equipment. The second feature I love about this machine is the SureTrack system that we've had fitted. Now this is an aftermarket part, and it's this wheel here that sits on the side of the machine. Believe it or not, this SureTrack system, it is extremely expensive. In fact, it retails for £1,000, which I have to say I feel personally is at least double what I think it should be at. It is extremely expensive, but when you understand the benefits of it, essentially what it does, it's got a wheel on a small arm here that moves up and down, and your gun attaches to it. So when the line marker is being pushed across the ground, the gun stays the same distance away from the ground as the vehicle, or sorry, the line marker moves across the contours of the ground, keeping a nice, even, steady line. Something that you can't get with a fixed arm position, such as the standard Titan or the standard Graco machine. So as it moves across, you'll see this wheel lifts up and it moves the gun arm at the same time, maintaining that consistent height from the ground. So as you're walking across and it moves slightly, you will get a consistent line. Whether or not it's worth the money is up to you. I personally feel it's an awful lot of money for this accessory, but we've had one fitted and it does work extremely well. And the third feature I love about this machine is the fact that you can actually lift this arm up and down. Up to now, on all of the machinery we've used, which has predominantly been Graco, you have to manually release the clamp, lift the spray arm up, and then reset that height, measure it off the ground, and then of course measure your line width. On this machine here, you have the ability to very, very quickly move that up and down just by using this handle on the side. What you'll see is it's got a small guide on the side with a few markings that show the height, and all we're going to do is just release and lower, and then turn this to raise. Once we've found our set position that we want for the gun height, all we need to do is tighten it up, and this just allows you to move your gun up and down to get the right line width. You want to be aiming normally for around 6 inches off the ground for a standard 4-inch using, say, a 3-2-1 tip. Number 4 on my list actually relates to the gun itself. Now, I have to say the gun is also one of the things I dislike, but as a positive, you can also fit Graco tips to the front. Whether you consider that an actual benefit or perhaps it's not quite a benefit, I like the fact that you have got interchangeable tips. It just works really, really well for our other equipment that we already operate. It means we can interchange them, use the same spray tips that we already have in stock, and it works really, really well. Now for number 5, we push line marking machines around car parks all day long. And one of the things we find is you can get a bit of backache when you're constantly pushing them up hills or on slopes, especially when they're fully loaded with paint. One of the things I love about this machine though is the balance. This has to be the most easy to maneuver machine that we've ever operated. It is so light and maneuverable that it makes line marking in tight spaces an absolute breeze. I think they found the right balance of positioning the engine and the paint just to make this the most comfortable line marking machine we've ever used to date. So the very last one for our list of things that we love about this machine are the ergonomics. You have just a few Allen head bolts at the side here, which means you can adjust the arms up and down and find that really comfortable position. It also comes with the Allen key mounted to the side with a magnet, and all you need to do is simply place it in the side, quick turn, and then you can move that adjustment to get it just right for you. And you can change that for every single operator on the machine. So a lot of things that we do love about this machine. So next up, this is the bit I always look for when I'm looking at reviews, is the things that we don't like about them. And it's always the part I want to jump to and see what's not so great about this equipment. So let me dive in there. I'm going to start out with a few of the things and let me know what your thoughts are on it as well. Number one for me, this machine only ships with the hoses and no lid. Now this is especially important because when you're operating a line marking machine, you're pushing it outside over tarmac or rough ground. And to sell a machine without a lid to me is absolutely crazy. What I found most annoying about that is I had to go out and purchase a Graco lid to stick on a Titan machine. That is a schoolboy error and something I think should be addressed immediately. You should never be shipping a line marking machine without a lid. The other thing that you'll get, as well as just the risk of spilling paint, of course, is the paint drying out. You have to find a suitable sized lid so that you can seal the paint, stop the air getting to it, because the majority of the paints you use for line marking are solvent-borne or waterborne, and they dry as soon as they come in contact with the air. So big problem, I think, is not shipping this machine with a lid. The second thing that I'm really not as keen on this machine is the location of the controls. And what I mean by that is our return valve is located all the way at the front of the machine. Now, the idea of the return valve is the paint is sucked up through our siphon tube, and then it's either powered straight to the gun, or we can return it to the paint tank. Normally, this control, certainly on a Graco machine, is situated just here within hand's reach. So when you're operating the machine, if you needed to, let's say, release the pressure for any reason, bearing in mind that we're normally operating between 1,000 and 3,500 PSI right here, we often want to just release that pressure as soon as we finish spraying, so that there's no risk of us applying paint to the ground accidentally, or of course, if a hose were to split and we'd have 3,500 PSI paint squirting out everywhere. To do that on this machine, you have to stop, reach all the way around the machine, and then operate the control. It is not in a good location, and I think this could be massively improved just by having it further up here, as you would imagine on a normal, say, Graco machine. Now, that is a feature purely of this model. When you look at the larger hydraulic models, they do actually have the dump valve back at the top, and it is within reach. This machine, however, lacks that feature. The other things I think are missing on this in terms of controls is the throttle control as well as the on-off switch. So if I wanted to adjust the throttle, which we do religiously every time we paint a line, let's say we're painting a car parking space, we need to stop for a second, somebody needs to move their car, or the customer's talking to us, I'll always wrap that throttle down. On this machine, there is absolutely no way you can do it at the front. You need to walk around again, drop down here, and then just inside, you'll find on the side of the engine, there is a small control. Now, it's a standard GX 160 engine. That's where they're located as standard by Honda, but on every other line marking machine we've ever operated, you also have control at the top here, just so you can ramp that RPM down. If you're stopping for anything more than a few seconds, you don't want to be wasting fuel, so just taking that throttle off is always something that I would recommend doing. It also means we can hear what's going on around us, especially if there are moving vehicles, lorries, HGVs, anything like that, or somebody trying to talk to us and get our attention. So another big one for me, again, on the controls, is just that lack of throttle control. And lastly, it's the off button. Now we use Graco for an awful lot of our line marking, and one of the things I love about it, as soon as I finish painting a line, one of the things I will always do is just turn the machine off if I'm going to stop for more than a couple of minutes. And on the machinery that we used to, for example, say the Graco, it's just the press of a button, almost like an emergency stop. You hit it once, the machine cuts out. On this machine, you have to actually stop, move around the machine, and then access the on-off control at the side of the engine. Again, it's one of those features that I think could easily be improved just by adding a bit of 2-core cable and a switch up to the top. It would cost less than £4 or £5 to add yourself, but it's a feature that I think really should be installed on any machine, even just as a safety precaution. So next up, one of the things I dislike is the lack of aftermarket parts. Now, there are a range of aftermarket parts available from Titan, such as the SureTrack arm that you can see on here, but there aren't any lasers and lights. And so unfortunately, in this case, we need lasers and lights, and we've had to go to Graco to buy their lasers to fit on the machine. Now, it may be that Titan are going to release their own form of laser guidance systems, but to date we couldn't find anything that was accessible, and so we've had to buy the Graco system to mount on and wire that up because there wasn't actually a place for a switch to connect these up to. That also leads us on to battery power, because when you're adding lasers and lights to a machine, you need to power them from a source. Now, these are all a 12-volt system, and so in order to power them, we needed to add a battery. Unfortunately, on this particular machine, there isn't a great deal of location space for a battery. We have managed to mount one onto a steel bar underneath, which we then use some tie downs just to keep it secure, but it isn't ideal, and I feel that there could be an option just to add a battery somewhere would be really, really handy. So next up is actually at the back of the machine here. Now what you'll see is, we've got a 15-meter hose, which is what we'd imagine seeing on any normal line marking machine. However, this hose isn't actually of any use to you if you're planning on doing any stenciling. What you get is a 4-meter hose that I've just unwrapped here that you can see. Now, this, as you can see, connects up to a small diaphragm at the top here, and it means that you can move away from the machine and carry out some stenciling a little bit further away. But the 15-meter hose is actually designed to assist with sort of the anti-pulsation device it has, and it just stops the sort of pulsing that you get on the lines. Now, I understand the purpose of that, but it is a little bit frustrating that you can't use that hose. I wonder if potentially you could swap the hoses around and have the 15-meter as your gun hose, and then you can move further away from the machine and use the 4-meter hose going between the anti-pulsation and the valve that we've got on here. But of course, it doesn't come that way, and I'm not sure. So for the time being, we'll leave it as it is, and we'll just accept that this 15-meter hose can't actually be used for anything practical. So next up is the gun itself. Now, I personally dislike the gun that comes as standard. It feels to me like a sort of a very limp handshake. I don't like it. And don't get me wrong, what I find difficult about that is that it works. When you spray the lines on the ground, I can't fault them. The lines are very, very good. But the feel of this gun is something that you would expect if you were doing decorating, for example, spraying a wall. That's how it feels to me. It's not like the solid lump of steel that you may be used to from a Graco system. And I feel that although it works, perhaps it's just a case of getting used to it, but it's still something that I'm just not that fond of. If I remove it from the cradle, I'll show you here, it does come with 2 guns on this machine as well, so you can paint double yellows, which I feel is a great feature, but not all that necessary, and perhaps that should be an extra in exchange for providing the machine with a lid. This is the gun, as I was saying, and it has that sort of cheap feel to it that you would imagine for decorating. Not something that I honestly feel is going to be up to lasting 10 years or so that we'd expect from one of our Graco machines. I hope it does, but only time will tell for us for now. When you buy the hydraulic machines, it does come with a different gun. This is the standard gun for the non-hydraulic machines, and that's what all your units will ship with. Now, for the last few things on my dislike list, if you will, it comes down to 2 things all at the front here. Now, there are some fantastic features. In fact, this pump will last roughly twice as long because of the stroke that you get on this in comparison to, say, a Graco machine, which is phenomenal. However, I haven't covered it in this because, quite honestly, I don't know enough about it yet to really give any guidance and advice on it. But when looking at the things I found difficulty with, this valve here is actually a single point of failure. I know that because I've had this machine in our workshop now for about 2 weeks, of which it's worked for about 2 days. And that's infuriating and frustrating because all it required was an O-ring. Now, unfortunately, the O-ring broke and we have had to wait for it to come through. That's nobody's fault. It should be a critical spare though. I mean, O-rings at the end of the day are pennies, and I would have thought something that's so critical to the machine's operation should come as a spare part, or at least be available for next day delivery if it is that critical to its operation. So I think in the future, Titan probably will ship it with spare O-rings if they consider it critical enough and it stops the machine's operation given its cost. But for now, it doesn't ship with any spares, and it's meant this one has actually been off the road now for 2 weeks, which, as I say, not ideal. Last but not least, This is your anti-pulsation device. Let me turn the machine around so you can see it in a bit more detail. Now the anti-pulsation device, I've got it down as one of the things I don't like, but actually it is very, very good. What I dislike about it is simply the location of this hose sticking outside. I feel that although it works incredibly well, it is purely a matter of time before this gets put into one of our vans, something hits it, and I dread to think what the cost is going to be to repair or replace. To me, it seems like a poor location for a hose. I would imagine it would be better suited mounted underneath, where we could then pipe underneath the chassis of the unit, bring it back up underneath, and we haven't got that impact risk at the side. Now it does seem fairly strong and sturdy for the time being, but I'm honestly concerned it wouldn't take a lot to break that off, and I think just relocating that underneath would probably solve an awful lot of problems in the future for people. So that's pretty much it of the things I dislike and really do like about the machine. I hope you consider it, when it works, and it has worked for us, the lines, I have to say, have been the best lines we've ever installed. They really are exceptional, and I hope that over the coming weeks, once we've got this one back on the road, I'll be able to show you just how good the lines and paints are, because they are second to none. Anyway, that's it for today. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next video.